Welcome to the Unbranded Leadership Podcast, where we discuss everything and anything about leadership that we can use to grow as leaders. On today's episode, we are talking with Dr. Stephen Fernez from the Brevard County Sheriff's Office. Dr. Fernez is a 23-year law enforcement professional and adjunct professor at Florida Institute of Technology. He's also the co-founder of the Law Enforcement Officers Surfing Association, which operated as a drug awareness and surfing 501c3 until 2019. Dr. Fernez also created and is the co-hosting the Black Dog Confessional podcast with Chris Cardinal. In 2020, he produced the substance abuse and mental health documentary film Coming Clean, which was selected for 13 film festivals throughout the United States. Additionally, him and his wife, Maria, own Carabella Spa and Wellness Studio in Melbourne, Florida, which offers self-care and beauty services as well as donation-based yoga sessions and local vendor pop-up events. The guy's got a heck of a resume. He's a phenomenal leader and a great professor who I get to call a friend, which is fantastic. The interview discusses all kinds of stuff, talking about leadership, mental health, culture, as well as politics involved within the law enforcement community. So very, very good podcast. I'm really excited for it for you guys. Enjoy. Mike DeStefano here with the Unbranded Leadership Podcast. I wanted to take a second to thank our sponsor, Recruit Strength, out of Melbourne, Florida. Recruit Strength is a strength training gym that offers 24-hour access to its members, as well as online and in-person strength and conditioning coaching. For more information or to contact them and get set up, visit recruitstrength.com. So welcome our guest for today's podcast, Dr. Stephen Fernez. Before we get going on all the questions that I have for you here, introduce yourself and tell us kind of how you got into the law enforcement career.
So actually, I got into law enforcement on a fluke. My dad did 34 years with Melbourne PD. He retired out as a commander. And my grandpa actually did 50 years in law enforcement. He did 23 up in Suffolk County, New York, and then came down here and was chief of police for Indian Harbor Beach for 27 years. My goal was not to be in law enforcement. I was like, I'm going to do something else. You know, my family's done that. I'm gonna explore other avenues here. So I was going to college, and I did my 2-year degree, and that was basically like grade 13 and 14. It really wasn't much. It was community college, and I just kind of did it, you know. Then I got over to UCF, and I said, well, I don't even know what I want to do. I don't even know what I want to study. So I guess I need to go talk to people in the guidance office. So I did, and they were like, you know what, you'd be geared towards sociology. It's like, okay, let me sign up for these classes. So I signed up for all these sociology classes, and about a year into my 4-year degree, I said, what does the sociology degree get me? And they said, you could go into working for a DCF or social work. And I was like, that doesn't sound like something I want to do. I think I'm just going to stop. So I stopped going to school. I wound up back here and I was working a job. And at the time, it was Sheriff Williams. I said, I'll take a couple of classes here and there. So I took a couple of classes at the UCF campus in Cocoa, and he was teaching there. He was teaching criminology and another class. And I wound up taking his first class, and I got an A, and I took the second class. And right before I go to walk out, he goes, don't go anywhere, Fernez. I want to grade your final. So he grades it, and he's like, you got 100 on my exam. He goes, you haven't taken a note. You barely walk in with shoes on. There's cops in here, and you how are you doing this? And I said, I just seem to know it. And he's like, you need to go to the academy. And I was like, I don't know about that. So a couple of months goes by and I run into him. And he goes, how much you making at your current job? And I told him it was like nothing, you know, I'm working part-time, making pennies. And he goes, how about I hire you as a civilian role? Told me what the money was. I was like, okay, I'll try that. You know, here I am, 23 years old, never had a real paycheck in my life. So those numbers sounded great. Um, I get into the job, and my first day there, Commander Petty looks at me and goes, well, I know you're supposed to be doing the civilian job, but you're going to start doing ride-alongs. I was in my second or third ride-along with this deputy named Randy Holiday at the time, and Randy goes, listen, you've been watching me do traffic stops all morning. Pick a car and tell me why you think I should pull them over. So I point to this car, and I said, they're all over the road. They're doing this. And Randy goes, all right. And we pull them over, and the guy winds up having a warrant. And at that time, you could still search incident to arrest. It was before Arizona v. Gantt came out, and And so we start searching the car, and I was like, wait, what's this part? What am I doing right now? And he was like, oh, this is the part where you're looking for drugs and guns. And I was like, this part I like. I like this part. He goes, well, if you want to do that, you need to go to midnight shift and become a deputy on midnight shift. So next thing I knew, I was in the police academy, and the next thing I knew, I was on midnight shift. And like I said, so when I say I kind of fluked into it, I kind of fluked into it, and I kind of just found my place. I wound up getting really into interdiction type of stuff, and I just it was fun. It was interesting. There was a lot that went into it, and it became like a new passion, and definitely got into it. Something I never thought I wanted to do, and then found out that that was kind of where I was meant to be. So it's kind of like how my background went.
It's kind of in your blood to begin with.
Yeah,
You just needed someone to push you in the right direction.
yeah,
So tell me, you have your doctorate now. You have a doctorate in education, correct?
yes.
So how did that all come into play?
I grew up just a punk rock kid, punk surfing, skating, right? And I I was like, is education really for me? And I kind of had those thoughts. And then I got into law enforcement, and I started saying, hey, you could test it a little earlier if you had a bachelor's degree, and you could test it a little earlier if you had a master's degree. And then I started reading all these stories about guys like Dexter from Offspring and not social distortion, but Bad Religion, and how they had their doctorate degrees. And the guy from Bad Religion, he taught at UCLA Berkeley. Dexter was doing some like crazy chemistry stuff and had his doctorate degree. And I was like, you know what? I think I want to be a punk with a degree. And I kind of did it for myself. Um, Part of it, I was already teaching. I was teaching at Barry University at the time. This is pre-COVID, and they started saying, "Hey, we're really gonna be looking at people with doctorate degrees." And I was looking at FIT, and I wanted FIT. And FIT said, unless you have the two letters in front of your name and the three letters after it, you're probably not going to be on the top picks. So, I enjoy teaching. I taught at Barry for 5 years. I love the environment. I really wanted to get into FIT. I loved the campus, the just watching those early adults walking around and just really being into it. Like I said, I think I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna get my doctorate. COVID had just hit. It was 2020. All the schools were shut down. Like Barry had definitely shut down. Everything was remote, and I said, this is the perfect time to do it. I had a 10-month-old. I wasn't going out much because I had a baby at the house, and I couldn't go out because there was COVID. So I said, better now to start it. So I did. So I jumped in, and it was about 27-month program. And every time I took another class and passed, I was like, "Wow, I'm doing this." I was the kid in high school that the teachers were like, "Are you sure you don't want to just join the military?" And are you sure that might be the best route for you? You need some discipline in your life. You don't have a great GPA, and I was like, "Oh, no, oh, I don't know." Um, so then to turn around and say I have a doctorate degree when people didn't even think I was going to graduate high school, it's a pretty rad feeling.
So you teach for FIT now as an adjunct instructor, correct?
Yes.
What topics do you teach? What subjects?
Oh, I teach. I've taught anything from politics and public administration to mediation and negotiation. I've taught current trends in public safety for Barry. I've taught a lot of things I teach for FIT are negotiation, mediation, public admin type style courses. At FIT, I fall under the psychology department, and at Barry, I fell under the public administration department. It's actually interesting. It's great to be able to get people in a room of 20 to 40 people, depending on your class size, and bring in a topic and open it for discussion. It doesn't matter age, ethnicity, none of it. When you get people in a room and you open it up into a safe forum to where my number one rule, my only rule in class is whatever anybody says, you can't get butt hurt. You have to be able to stay calm, debate it, and have that conversation. And it's amazing when what you can do when people are willing to sit down and not get their feelings hurt, right? I only had one time, and he was an older gentleman, about maybe in his mid 50s. He was coming in just to take some classes, and he lost it in class. And I looked at him and I go, "What's the one rule?" And he goes, "Well, I don't care." And I said, "Well, I do. So you're gonna have to take a walk. Come back when you're calm." And he walked out. He never came back in for the rest of the semester. So, but everybody else took note of that. That was a person that showed intolerance, did not want to hear two sides of every story. He just wanted his story to be heard, and his opinion to be the only opinion. And at the end of it, we were able to have an amazing discussion about a very volatile topic at the time. Um, and there was a lot of understanding that happened. And if you can do that with people, one of the best things I've ever seen, it was an older black male and a younger black male. And a younger black male said something. And in the middle of the class, the older black male turned around and literally started to be this kid's father. Like educating this child from his point of view, from his culture's point of view, from his ethnicity's point of view. And the entire class stopped and for 20 minutes watched this man talk to this young man. And it was a great moment. It to me, one of the pinnacles of teaching for me was watching that happen. For me to sit down and watch the two different generations have this conversation was awesome. And to me, that's what education, especially in adulthood, is all about, especially at that college level.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's what we're kind of looking for in a university setting, especially when you get up into the higher levels of education, your bachelor's, master's, doctorate degree, is that critical thinking. And like you said, let's all be adults here and have a conversation without getting butthurt and having, you know, those opinions of whatever we may have that's I'm right, you're wrong kind of deal. Let's
Mhm.
explore. So you kind of branched into exactly where I kind of want to go with this, which is in your role as at the sheriff's office. You're obviously in a higher leadership role now, but you've worked your way through the ranks. So as you've done so, what kind of struggles and challenges have you had leading different generations and different groups of people as you've moved through the ranks?
It's funny because when I got hired, I was I was probably the group that came in right as the Vietnam veteran era was leaving. So my first couple of years was a lot of guys that had been through Vietnam, had been through Desert Storm. So it was a much different mindset. As times have progressed, we see a younger generation that is probably a little bit more open emotionally compared to what the older generation was. Um, when you're trying to mentor them, you basically have to taper your mentoring style, your leadership style to each individual, especially at the squad level. Everybody has a different personality when they walk in, and sometimes you can have difficult personalities to deal with, Um, it's just interesting because, like I said, when I started with this Vietnam era, I'll never forget this guy. He's passed on now, but he did not talk to me for 2 weeks. I was on his squad for 2 weeks. He did not talk to me. I had not earned, in his eyes, the respect of being a deputy yet. I was a new kid. And one incident happened, and he showed up and he watched me handle it. And the next day, he walked in, he looked at me, and he goes, "You know what? I like how you handled that, but you need a few scars on your face. You're too pretty." And like that was that Vietnam era of deputy. And now that that's changed. A lot of this younger generation, they've grown up in the internet world, the social media world. Some of it has caused communication issues that you're basically teaching them how to communicate. Whereas that older generation, that's what they knew. They knew how to build rapport. They knew how to maintain a position of I don't want to say position of power, but a position of running their call. They knew how to make sure they kept people separated, how to have those interviews, how to calm people down. Where the younger generation may not have been put into some of those situations yet, because of social media and popping in your earbuds and maybe not having to have those kind of conversations. So it's definitely a big change just in that one factor. A lot of the younger ones, like I said, the older generation, they were used to taking orders, so they didn't ask questions. They went and did what they were told. The younger generation has a tendency to say why. And a lot of times I don't have a problem explaining why, but don't ask me in the middle of a heated scene. Follow what I'm telling you to do, and then when we're done, I will debrief and explain it all day long. But what if I'm telling you to do something at that time? It's for protection of the civilians. It's protection of you. I will give you your why, but let's get through it. Where the older generation, you just say, "Hey, do this," and they're like, "All right." They never questioned it. They got done and went to 7-Eleven and grabbed their Slurpee, and they were on to the next.
Now, you bring up a great point there about the differences, especially in leadership, when it comes to on the call versus, off the call. When you have that, for lack of better terms, that wartime leadership versus peacetime leadership,
Mhm.
you have to treat it in different angles because there is life or death situations where we don't have the time to slow down and explain everything to you. You just need to do what I say right now. We'll talk about it later when we're done with this.
Yeah.
Um, So generationally, you brought up something that was really good as far as the newer generation that's coming into the job and their ability to communicate with others. Um, it's 2025 now. You're starting to have those trickle in of the COVID kids, as I call them. Uh, how is that affecting it? How are you seeing their attitude, their communication skills as far as from the online learner, basically?
I kind of like what I said a minute ago. I think it's a lot of they've dealt with so much internet, they've dealt with gaming and everything else that they haven't had to have that one-on-one conversation. And a lot of them have never, where we used to have the old street schoolyard fight or the school bus fight, they didn't have that. They just there's a lot of people that I've talked to in interviews that have never really been even in a heated discussion, let alone a physical interaction.
Hmm.
Um, and a lot of times, I'd like to know that in advance, not because it rules you out, but it may be different how we teach you DT. Maybe we need to teach you that fight or flight. We need to see if it's there. So when you're rolling around with somebody, it's not tap tap, we're done. It's no, you have to get out of this. This is life or death now. You have to get out of this. And it's amazing the switch you see flip in them. And it's I have not once yet seen it where it was in the negative. It's always been flipped in the positive, where people are like, "Wait, man, that just gave me confidence. I
Hmm.
never had to do this in school. I didn't play sports because for 2 school years there was no sports. It they didn't wrestle in high school. They never played a contact sport. They did, sometimes they didn't even have the opportunity to do so at the high school level because of everything that was going on. Uh, so being able to expose them to certain things it was a lot different than that earlier generation who had been through Vietnam, had been through Desert Storm, who had, some of the guys that came in that are, 15, 16-year deputies now, they were the ones that went through Afghanistan. But we're talking that, remember, this is September 11th, 2001, that these guys were going over there.
Yeah.
So we now have deputies that are born in 2000, that are born in 2002, that are born in 2004. So a lot of them, that's what they knew about Afghanistan, what they knew about September 11th was in a history book. It wasn't real life like it was to us. They didn't get to see people become impassioned. They didn't get to see people that were willing to be selfless and go out there and do jobs and work in the community. They saw what happened during their formative years of their high school years, what was going on with COVID. And that wasn't a conflict. That was a reaction, and the reaction was to stay home and do nothing, right? So they didn't really learn about having to go out there and give of themselves and be selfless like a lot of other people did during their courses of growing up. Now, it and I it's fortunate for them that they didn't have to deal with Afghanistan. They didn't have to be exposed to things like that. But now they do have some deficiencies that we have to work on through training. Um, to where you open up their mind a little bit more that maybe uh, somebody wants to hurt you. And this is how you defend against that. If you've never had to experience that, then it's upon us to expose you to that prior to being out there in the real world and doing it. Because the last thing you would want is for you to call 911 because you're watching a something happening in front of you, and the person who gets there has never been exposed to anything. You want them to have that background training. You want them to know how to be good decision makers, and that comes from exposing them to things early on in the training process.
Yeah, that's really why experience is so critical for
Mhm.
anything that we do in the public safety arena.
Oh yeah, if I didn't have a phase five, what I call it, we have 4 phases of training. But your phase five is when you get out in that probationary year that you have as a deputy. There's that senior guy, that one dude that's willing to put you under his wing and take you out and say, "Listen, kid, this is what you do. This is how you do it. This is why we do it. Learn from this." I loved being a phase five. Now I look back at the deputies that I phase five, and they're all in leadership roles, and I'm like, "All right, I did something good for them." And the best part is, they'll come up to me and they'll be like, "Dude, You taught me that. And I'm like, all right, that was a win, you know?
Absolutely. That's the importance of mentorship, of taking the people under your wing and helping them grow. And then, like you said, it helps you as a leader grow as well. So we just had a great discussion on the aggressive-ish portion, the physical portion of law enforcement, and how the changes have occurred over the years based on, like you said, experience, especially combat experience and things like that. How have you seen it change as far as the mental health aspect goes? I know we've had a lot of conversations in the past about this.
Big difference, huge difference. The Vietnam era of men compartmentalized their emotions. Um, it was never an option to say you had a weakness or to look for help, which unfortunately is why public safety has such a high suicide rate, a high divorce rate. This generation definitely is more willing to sit down and talk. They're more willing to come in and tell you if they're going through something, which is a positive. I mean, obviously, I can probably name 5 people off the top of my head who committed suicide after leaving the job or while working the job. I just read an article the other day about about a law enforcement officer who committed suicide. Um, a lot of it is we compartmentalize, we don't express our emotions. We don't know how to communicate, those type of things, we can run a scene all day long. We can tell other people what the problem is in their relationship, but we go home and we do the same thing. And which is why, I mean, if you look at the divorce rate in law enforcement and public safety in general, it's significantly higher than people who work in the private sector. I think in America it's like a 50% divorce rate, but in public safety it's like 75%. Um, so I mean that's a huge issue. And then you look at lifespan. People who don't take care of themselves, don't mentally take care of themselves. They wind up dying within 5 years of leaving the job. I'm big on pushing mental health. I'm big on pushing self-care. Um, my door is open for anybody who wants to come talk. I would rather sit there and listen to you for an hour than show up at your funeral and listen to somebody talk about you for an hour. Um,
Agree. Absolutely
so
agree.
I mean, that's where I think I've seen a big difference in the generations. Um, in my generation, the ones that are about 20 years in, it's 50-50. There's ones that if you get them involved in the conversation, they'll open up, but you have to get them involved in the conversations. Then there's other ones that'll full out come to you and say, listen, I'm having this issue. It's probably taking a toll on my work. I'm not as active as usual. This is what's going on in my personal life, and that's good because a lot of times there isn't a story that I haven't heard the same time 5 times over, right? So at least I can give them advice on what I saw other people do, what I've done in my life. I mean, I obviously you with recruit strength and teaching people how to physically maintain their body as well as mentally maintain their body and using that as an outlet. I believe in the same things in forms of yoga, meditation, just communication. That dinner that you have with your squad, or breakfast you have with your squad, where you guys are talking about everything. I think that is one of the most important things you can do to sit down and break bread with people and not talk about the job. Talk about your life, talk about everything that else is going on, and then when it's time to go back to work, you go back to work. But just being able to let people vent about things that are going on in their life, or just tell you about the positives that are going on in their life and encourage them. Those are huge meals. Those are huge meals in people's lives.
No doubt. I definitely like that. I'm a firm believer in breaking bread with people and like you said, having those conversations, the dinner table discussions. I mean, firemen love to eat. So, but those are where most of our problems are solved. Most of our problems are brought out and exposed is at the dinner table over either a cup of coffee or at dinner time. Everything gets that's cleared there, and that kind of that's our setting for having the discussion that you were talking about with your students. We're all going to talk about a bunch of stuff. Nobody get butt hurt. And if you get butt hurt, you can go to your bunk room and,
Mhm.
but big factor there. So right now we're going through a transitional time politically, of a new president coming in, and all the different things that he's doing and, bringing in his administration and everything like that. The sheriff's office is unique in the fact that where with a police department for like a municipality or a fire department or anything like that, the police chief is usually a hired position. With the sheriff's office, it's a politically elected position. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that and what kind of uh, not necessarily struggles, what kind of environment are you facing as an upper level leader whenever there is that change in sheriff?
So I have been through, I started off with Sheriff Phil Williams. I saw that transitional period happen into Jack Parker, who was an amazing man, but a different type of leader than Phil Williams was. Um, and then, but I was young. I was like a 2 year deputy when that transition happened. So I was just like keeping my head low. I was like, I don't know what's happening. I hear about all this stuff. Let's just see what happens, right? And then I was, oh gosh, it was 2011 when the election went on for Sheriff Wayne Ivey. I
That
learned a
was
lot from,
2011.
yep,
Oh my gosh, that
he
feels
took
like
office in
yesterday.
2012. Yeah. The
Wow.
election was in 2012, so campaigning started in 11, you know. I'll tell you, I have never in my life met a person like Sheriff Wayne Ivey. That guy has got to have clones. He has to have clones. I mean, he is everywhere doing everything. But the good part about it is he is the politician. He is a law enforcement officer who became a politician, right? He does not put that on us. He wants you to run your precinct like a cop would run a precinct, you know. He handles all of that. He works with the county commission. He works with all these charities. I mean, there's no place the man isn't at. He understands how, I mean, it's like he programmed the computer like on politics. It's impressive to watch. But he comes to us, he gives us his expectations. He's, this is my bar, this is what I want you guys to be at. He does like people in his command team to be interactive with different charity groups, which I'm great with. I've been doing that for years. I mean, obviously, I started with Garrett and Ricky with St. Baldrick's. Gosh, that was under Jack Parker, so that was at least 2011, 2010, right? And running the team for the sheriff's office for St. Baldrick's, which I mean is amazing. It was amazing to do. I loved watching those kids every year and them coming up and shaving our heads and in solidarity with children's cancer research, you know. But then on top of that, I mean, we do things with Boy Scouts of America. Yesterday, I was at an event for kickball for the No Bad Days Foundations, which are for kids that have disabilities, and um, but we enjoy it. Those are the things we enjoy to do. And the sheriff likes to surround himself with like-minded people that are eager, that have the same type of thought processes. Because obviously, you want your agency to run in one direction. You don't need anybody pushing against you. And so, but he handles all of that so beautifully that it allows us to just do our thing for him. I mean, he's our sheriff. He sets up the level that he wants us to work at. He gives us our parameters, and he makes it so much easier, makes it so easy to do it. Um, I I can tell you that like I said, I've never seen a man work as much as that man works. He truly loves the role. He truly loves the community, and he loves the interaction. He loves being the MC at events for charity events. He loves that. But in return, it's great to have that networking. It's great to have those partnerships. I mean, it saves us so much money. Things that maybe weren't in our budget, but people are willing to donate towards those things. I mean, it's amazing what he's able to do for a lot of these charity groups. I mean, the thousands upon thousands of dollars he brings in for charity groups, and yeah, it's political. But he loves to do it, like it. You know, it is if you love your job, it's like you never go to work, right? It's like and that's him. Like you would joke, I think the man lives in that uniform. I think he sleeps in that uniform. He loves it. There isn't a time that if something were to happen that he doesn't show up. Um, and when you have that kind of support, man, transition is easy. Growth is easy. He Every time I do something, he'll be the first one to pick up the phone to be like, "Man, you did a great job. Hey, what deputy was doing that? I got to call that deputy, tell them they did a good job." Like it's awesome. I can't complain about my work environment. I always tell people the day I stop enjoying what I do, and I'll leave. And but I enjoy the team that we work with, and I enjoy going to work.
So you mentioned how having that support makes your life a lot easier, obviously. So how does that support necessarily come from the top down leadership? You get that support. How do you transition that to the rest of your team?
So the sheriff always says you put the right people in the right places, they're going to do the right thing, right? So I've taken that motto and I push that down. I push a lot of power down. I like to I sit down with gosh, I can't tell you how many people I've sat down with over 23 years. And I ask them, what do you want to do? Where do you see yourself in a few years? And if they tell me, hey, I want to be an agent, okay, cool. Then what I'm going to start doing is any of these calls that come out that are kind of a cluster that are going to require a lot of writing, you're that guy. The sheriff has always done that. He's pushed the power down to us to make decisions. And in turn, I do that for my people. I've seen a much better product. The deputies that we do that with, they grow so much. It's awesome to watch. I truly enjoy when kids get that wow factor, when those new deputies get that wow factor, like that's payment for me. That's like I could eat that up all day, just seeing that wow factor in their eyes. Um, and when the sheriff tells us, hey, this is what I expect of you. I expect your deputies to do this. I expect your sergeants to do that. I expect your lieutenants to do this. He's given us our mission, you know. He wants us to get it done. He doesn't micromanage my mission. He just wants it done. He wants it done right. And as long as morale is good and people are happy, um, we're doing things that are budget efficient. It's great for the community. I mean, he constantly picks up the phone and calls you and tells you how proud he is. Like for me, that's I'm like a Pavlov's dog. You ring the bell and I'm like, I'm starting to drool. I want to eat. Like so when he picks up the phone and tells me, hey, you did a good job with that. I'm like, all right, what next can I do? It motivates me to want to work. I mean, I get down there with the people and like I said, I'll sit there with a brand new deputy and I'm like, hey, this is what we're looking for. This is how we do this. This is how you write that. And they're like, they get that look in their eyes like, oh my gosh, I just did this for the first time. And you're like, yeah, bro, you got this. And after that, they're so sponges that it's a rewarding feeling. And I know the sheriff gets the same feeling when he sees us achieve something that we want to achieve. It's almost like your child got something. And it's like I said, it's a good feeling. I don't mind going to work.
Man, there's so much there to unpack of what you just said. Talking about family dynamics, morale, motivations. Oh man, that's fantastic. Let's go into morale real quick. So you said that basically when you're empowering your team, you're creating buy-in, you're getting that increase in morale. I know in public safety, at least on the fire side, and I imagine on the law enforcement side as well. In fact, I know on the law enforcement side as well, that turnover is becoming an issue. And that's a lot of not necessarily because of the environment or the job or anything like that, but we're seeing in this newer generation um, the desire to jump from one agency to another. Like they're not really the loyalty doesn't exist as much anymore. Do you find that those that you are empowering and that are having that buy-in and that you're really mentoring and coaching up, that they're more likely to stay with your organization?
Yes and no. So yes, if their goal has always been to be a deputy sheriff and work their way up, right? Others come in and their goal is to go federal,
Hmm.
and or go privatized. It, of course, they don't tell you that when they get hired, but you could see it within a couple of years. That hey, this is what they're mentoring towards. So you do have the ones that if they do, they jump to those federal jobs, or like I said, something maybe at like an L3 Harris, where maybe it's something that has to do with investigations there. So there is a little bit of that, but I can tell you that other than the ones that are jumping to do those two things, the other ones stay. Um, they feel like they emotional intelligence and emotional buy-in. It's being a supervisor who operates under a lot of Goldman's theories of emotional intelligence. Getting that buy-in from my people involves me getting my hands dirty. So sometimes I have to get out there with them and teach it. Not just say, hey, this is what I expect. How can I tell you I expect something, but you don't know how to do it? And then hey, why didn't you do that? I told you what I expected, but I don't know how to do it. Well, if I don't go out there and show them how to do it, who's going to show them how to do it? Now, once I show you how to do it, I expect you to do it the next time. But a lot of times it's about getting out there and getting that buy-in from them because I don't ask anybody to do something that I wouldn't do. And if that means there's a car crash that needs flares put out, I don't care what rank I am. I'm going to go out there and put flares. I'm the only one available. I'm going to work that, and people go, well, they get that buy-in from that because they know that even the guy with the stuff on his collar is willing to go down and do it. What I see right now is in this generation is they're more mercenary. They'll jump from place to place if it involves money. But a lot of the people who jump place to place, they're your meat standards. They're your meat standard deputy. They're not the ones that were ever like super loyal. They're not the ones that were super active. They were more the meat standard. Now there are a few exceptions. There are a few exceptions, but um, we are also seeing a generation that is hired for jobs and not for careers.
Mm.
Um, that's a big difference. They've kind of grown up in this environment where you can, well, you don't like this, we'll go do that. Well, you don't like this, we'll go do that. They didn't grow up into the environment like I grew up in, which was like, hey, if you dedicate yourself to something, if you say I'm going to do it, then you're going to do it, and you're going to do it until the end. And a lot of times now, like the people that I see jump, they were the younger generation that said more mercenary, more, all right, I'll jump over there for a little bit. I don't like it over there. I'll jump back or I'll jump over here. Um, I see it a lot. I see people who jump and then within 8 months call me and go, how hard is it for me to come back? I'm like, it's not hard. Just, it wasn't what you thought it was. No, it wasn't what I thought it was. Oh, okay. Um, and sometimes when they're younger and they've never experienced anything else, sometimes they're just testing the water somewhere else. And then they go, all right, now my home is over here. And they pick up the phone and they want to come back. I've had several of them in the past few months, um, which is nice because it means the environment that we're creating where I'm at is something somebody wants to come back to. It's like that kid that goes off to college. Is the kid gonna keep venturing out, or does they want to go back home and be near family or whatever? And in this one, a lot of times we'll see people that'll venture out and they go, you know what, home's here, and they wind up coming back. I mean, it's one thing when you, like for us, I have a great boss. I like to work for my boss. I've worked for bad bosses earlier in my life, and you may not want to be in that environment, but that's not where I work. I work for a great sheriff. I work for great people. Um, and like I said, I enjoy coming to work every day.
Yeah, the grass is always greener when you're looking over the fence until you get to it and you go, oh man, it's either the
Mhm.
same or it turns out it's actually 10 times worse. I just
Yeah,
thought
and
it was
that's
going to be better.
it's funny because that's everything always looks greener from a distance, and
Hmm.
then when you get over there, you realize it's got as much crabgrass as every other place does, right? It's fortunately for us, I feel like our grass gets fertilized a lot. Um, the sheriff's, I've never had the sheriff call me and say, "Let's cut corners here." Let's cut. It's always, what can we do to be all in? What can we be all in for our people? What do we need to do for this? I, I can't think of a single time where he asked me to do any less. If anything, he asked me to do more.
So you were talking about the environment and the environment that you have there, and I think you kind of described a lot of it. But if you could boil it down into one sentence, what would you say the culture for Brevard Sheriff is for the
Oh,
organization?
uh,
I'm putting you on the spot here, and I'm sorry.
it is. I would say it's a place of growth.
Hmm.
Um, the team there wants to invest in their people, and there's a lot of places I have been to. I've talked to people in other positions where it seems like it's stagnant. Um, and when things get stagnant, things fall apart. And one of the things I can say is that there's so much push for growth for the individual. Um, it motivates people to want to go to work. Yeah, I mean, there are times you go to those terrible calls. I mean, you've been there, you've been a firefighter a long time. You go to those calls that are absolutely terrible. Um, and those are things you carry with you for the rest of your life. But uh, there's so much support and so much positivity and so much encouragement in law enforcement, at least at my agency, that it makes you motivated. And for me to know that there's that personal growth aspect of it, that's a reward for me. And I'm not saying you may stay slick sleeve your entire career, but that doesn't mean you don't grow. You know, there's and growth is, I mean, a totality of things. It's your personal life. It's how you operate every single day. It's how you go to work. It's what you choose to do in your hobbies. Um, when people get stagnant, they fall apart. And uh, I do a lot of self-reflection. I look at where I was 12 years ago. I look at where I was 5 years ago. I look at where I was 6 hours ago. And to know that I'm where I'm at, it makes me realize like what a blessing my career has been, um, and how I've used that to benefit others. I have a punk rock heart, man. I love doing things for the community. I love being able to use the connections that I've made within all of my years to be able to give back, to maybe connect people with the right people in order to get something done for others. I would have never been able to do that at 18 years old as a young punk with all these thoughts of grandeur that I was going to be able to do. I didn't have all the networking connections, and I've learned so much about that through the years and from the sheriff that um, now being able to pick up that phone and make those connections and seeing that create something, that's just awesome to me.
Yeah, you bring up a really great solid point there about self-reflection and kind of, climbing up a mountain, we're always looking at the top of the mountain of, oh, I got to be there, I got to be there, I got to be there. But it's nice to stop halfway up and look down and see how far you've actually come and celebrate that. Celebrate how far you've come in life and how you've grown. That's fantastic.
No,
So,
you bring it up. It's like people are always they're reaching. They're always reaching, but
mhm.
they don't know how far they've actually come. And when you look at that in some form of self-analysis, self-reflection, however you want to call it, whatever you want to call it, um, you realize like, wow, man, I started off here and I'm here. Like, and if you when you do that, man, you're so much more positive. You're so much more positive. You still have those goals. You still have those goals. But you're not just constantly reaching. You're not constantly estimating how far that goal is away because you've achieved so many other goals on the way up that this is just another one you're working towards. When you forget about all of this, that ego inflates, you get negative, but when you remember where you came from and everything that you put into where you're at, man, it's like you wake up and think, all right, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. And you get up and you go to work and you say, what can I do today? And that's why I wear all the awards that you see people wear. I don't wear any of my awards because
Me
that's everything I did yesterday.
neither. Me
That's everything
neither.
I did yesterday, and I'm focused on tomorrow. So I don't need anybody to pat me on the back for what I did yesterday. I want to know what I can do for you tomorrow and how we can get this done. Um, this is all just flair, you know. I love them. I appreciate anybody who ever gave them to me. But it boosted my confidence. It rang that bell. It made me drool. It made me go to work. But all of this is everything I did yesterday. I'm ready to see what I can do for people today and tomorrow, and how I can build that next generation up because I'm not going to be here forever. I have a second phase of life that I plan on living outside of this. Um, but if it wasn't for this, I would not have the motivation and ambitions that I have for one day when I retire, which may not be for, another decade, but I still, like I said, I still have my goals. I still have things I want to do, and I encourage everybody to have goals. The one thing that I tell everybody is you have to have those little rewards. Don't set some crazy goal and expect to achieve it tomorrow. It's reasonable goals in reasonable time frames. I achieved this in the 3 months that I was working towards it. Cool. Now what's the next step? Well, in the next 3 months, I want to work towards this. No different than getting a degree, no different than trying to focus on promotions, but sit down and come up with reasonable goals and reasonable time frames. Don't just say, I want to do this. They should give it to me. No, you need to earn that whether it's through getting the right education, the right trainings, investing in the right people, having the right people invest in you. You just have to have those reasonable goals and reasonable time frames, and all those little wins will build up. And the next thing you know, you turn around and there's just this mountain of wins behind you. Yeah, there's some L's in there. You're gonna have some L's. Everybody's gonna catch that loss every now and then. You're gonna have that bad day where you screw up. But that one day is not a reflection of who anybody is all the time, right? So you just got to get past that. That's that nick, that's that scar that you're going to take with you. But in the future, when you see a deputy starting to do that, or a firefighter starting to do that, or anybody starting to do that, you can go, see that scar right there. I did that. That's how I got that scar. This is what I'm going to tell you to do to avoid that scar, and hopefully they listen. But every scar I have, I'm willing to throw it out there because I took my licks along the way, as we all have. But it's caused an amazing amount of growth in me. It's benefited me as a father. It's benefited me as a husband. Um, and I mean, like I said, I think there's so many people out there that are putting goals too far out of their reach. Get those reasonable goals and reasonable time frames, and the next thing you know, you're going to be at your goal. You don't run a marathon day one. You pick up, you run a few miles here and you run a few miles there, and the next thing you know, after a year of training, then you're there. You just don't pick up and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go run a marathon today, because you're probably going to wind up in an ER somewhere, right? So that's not a reasonable goal and a reasonable time frame. But hey, I'm going to go run a 5K. That's a reasonable goal and a reasonable time frame. Um, but yeah, that's kind of like how I kind of operate most of my days.
That goes back to that whole. I had just done a podcast recently about the personal strategic planning and setting the mission, then having your goals, objectives, and tasks. And you have your tasks that are daily things that you can do immediately in order to gain and complete an objective. And that's working toward your goals, your bigger goals, and the bigger mission overall, and having that, like you said, the small obtainable ones, the 5K that you complete. Yeah, you've completed the 5K, but that was in the process of getting to that marathon. So you're
Absolutely.
still going toward that final goal. You're just hitting those objectives along the way and getting
Mhm.
those little check marks, which, as you noted as well, is that point of when you're drooling. You're the drooling dog. Oh, I got
Mhm.
another check mark. Now I'm even more
Mhm.
motivated. Oh, another one. Let's go. And that that
Mhm.
that
It's like
consistent
losing
growth.
weight. You lose that first 5 pounds, you're like, oh, all right,
Yeah,
I'm ready to do this. I
game
know,
on.
I know you're a power lifter and all that. You don't have to worry about those things, but I've eaten a few too many meals at late night restaurants that I got to worry about. Sometimes I got to cut that weight off, and I start to feel the belt get a little tighter.
Well, we all go through that, even the power lifters, especially when we're coming up to a meet. So to wrap it up here, and I think you gave some absolutely solid advice, but what suggestions would you have for that aspiring leader that's wanting to, maybe the officer who's doesn't have a leadership role currently, but is looking to get into a leadership role within law enforcement? What would be your advice and your suggestion to that person?
Invest in yourself.
Mm.
Invest in yourself. A lot of times people are so worried about, doing for others, they forget to invest in themselves. And investing in yourself could be self-care. It could be a great example. We all wear a lot of equipment. Go get yourself a massage. Go to a chiropractor, get checked out. Things that are gonna put you in a better physical condition so that you're mentally more clear. Anything that's a distraction that takes away from your mental clarity, you address it. Don't just let it fester. It could be going to school. I thought when I got into my law enforcement career that I got a great gig. I got a great job. And the next thing I know, I was back in school because I wanted to invest in myself. I finished my 4 year degree when I was an agent. I finished my 5 year degree when I was a sergeant. I finished my doctorate degree when I was a major. I have never stopped investing in myself. Now, that doesn't mean I take away from my family. I always worked around my family while investing in myself. If my kids had sports, I was always at their sports thing. If my wife had something to do, she went and did it. I would invest in myself at different times. If that meant I had to stay up late after people went to bed, I did it. But if you continue to invest in yourself, one day you're going to turn around, you're going to have this crazy resume. And you're going to be like, wow, whether that's just a personal win for you or you're going to need that for something you decide in the future, don't close doors. Don't say, hey, I'm not going to try that because it's out of my comfort zone. Explore that. Go do it. Go do it. Don't do not build walls around yourself. Invest in yourself, be willing to grow, um, and it'll happen. Like I'm gonna be real. I wanted to be a street cop. I wanted to be a street cop. I loved it. And then one day I said, everybody was coming to me being like, "You testing? You testing for sergeant? You testing for sergeant?" And I was like, "Oh, I guess, you know." And then I tested for sergeant. And then next thing I knew, I was a sergeant. And then I was doing all this stuff as a sergeant. People are like, "Oh, that lieutenant test is coming, bro. You're the dude." And I'm like, "Okay, well, if you guys believe I can be that guy, then I'm gonna do it." And I invested in myself. I went started studying, jumped to the next thing. And the next thing I knew, I was in a command position. And I was like, in my mind, I'm still that kid pushing a patrol car, you know? But now I'm here. But it was the fact that I didn't close a door. There were things I didn't want to do, but I didn't close the door. If it was offered to me and they said, "Hey, I think this would be good for your career," I would ask a couple of senior people, "Hey, do you think this would be good for my career?" Yes, absolutely. I'd go do it. I wasn't blind. I would ask people, "Hey, you've been here for 25 years. I've only been here for 6. Do you think this is a good avenue?" Absolutely, dude. You need to go do that. Okay, cool. So because of that, got to be a field training officer. I got to be a corporal. I never wanted to be an agent. I wanted going to be an agent. I did it for 3 years. I loved it. I wound up, because of that time that I did as an agent, I wound up becoming a sergeant. And then shortly after becoming a sergeant, I got a phone call to say, "Hey, you're going back to being an investigative sergeant." If I would have never taken that step over here, I would have never wound up in this other job, which was probably my favorite time. I loved it. For 3 years, I loved it. Um, and then when the phone call came and said, "Hey, you ready to be a lieutenant?" I was like, "Yeah." "Well, you're going to North Precinct." Well, for me, North Precinct, the opposite side of the state, the opposite side of the county for me. But I was like, you know what?
Feels
I've
like the
never worked
state.
there, but all right, let's try it. And it was, and I enjoyed it. I met some amazing people. It allowed me to invest and to meet people that we needed to have that meet. We needed to connect. They were looking for the right person for this, and I was the right person for them. And that's why I said when you close doors, man, you just limit yourself. You build those walls around you, and if you continue to close doors and you continue to build those walls, eventually you're just stuck. You can't get over those walls anymore, you know? So just don't close the doors, invest in yourself, um, and be a good teammate. Be a good team player. Sometimes you got to take the L to let that other guy win. Don't let him take then you take the L and you let him win. Um, it's it's all about the totality of being a good human, right? If I would have stopped growing at 18 years old, I I'd be stuck in a hole somewhere, you know. But I continue to invest in myself. I continue to listen to good mentors. I continue to give of myself to others. Um, and at the end of the day, no matter what, no matter if people want to say I was a good cop or I just wanted to be a good person. That's it. I just want to be a good person. I don't want you to pigeonhole me and say, "Oh, that's Steve the cop." No, I'm not. I am Steve Fernez. I want to be a good person. And I want people to remember that at the end of the day, I was willing to do this for them and I was willing to do that for them. But I didn't neglect myself either, because honestly, I feel if I invest in myself and it makes me better, that gives me more tools to give to other people. And so as I said, invest in yourself.
And there's a reason why on planes they tell you to put the oxygen mask on yourself before you start putting it on the next person. Got to
True
take care
story.
of yourself before you can help others, right?
Mhm.
Steve, I really appreciate this. This has been a fantastic conversation. I'm excited to see everything that you're doing at the university as well as with the sheriff's department and everything. And I'm also interested to see what you do in your as you said second half of your life there.
I got plans, bro. I got plans.
Well, I appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate you, man. Be safe.
You as well.